It's not traditional love, but it is love and care shown through the therapeutic lens.
I think this has huge implications for our work as psychologists in residential care.
Yeah, it's pivotal, isn't it?
I think it's important that we incorporate the parents' and families' voice in our psychological assessment. Just because they're in care doesn't mean that they can't maintain that involvement.
I genuinely feel that actually sometimes the care system does free some parents up to be just engaged in being the parent.
So I'm wondering if we should touch on the independent review of children's social care, because I think this has huge implications for our work as psychologists in residential care. And a huge theme that came out of that review was the importance really of loving relationships in a young person's life. And I've been thinking a bit about what that means for us as psychologists and how we hold that need in mind when we're working with children who may or may not have maintained relationships with their birth parents and who build those loving relationships with residential staff. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts initially on how we think about and hold in mind the importance of love and relationships for a child in care?
Yeah, it's pivotal, isn't it? And it's quite often an area that we maybe don't focus wholly on, and yet is central to every child's development. And I guess there's a mirror there for us too, within the sort of therapeutic standpoint, within the sort of therapeutic domain. I'm mindful of all the research that tells us about how one of the biggest contributing factors to successful engagement within the therapeutic relationship is that relationship. Whether you feel like you're making progress within therapy can often be mediated by the relationship that you have with your therapist and how you experience that being an unconditional sort of unconditional positive regard within that space, compassion, respect, feeling like space is held for your experiences, your thoughts, being not just heard, but listened to and responded to within that therapeutic space. And I guess it's not traditional love or care, but it is love and care shown through the therapeutic lens, how we hold space for each other, how we show up for each other, how we remember the stuff that young people find important and want to explore and want their feelings validated. There are all these aspects to the therapeutic relationship that are also potentially present or not within our relationships elsewhere. And it's a really kind of special experience. And it isn't just that they get that with us as the therapists and the therapies team, is that they potentially also get that with our residential coaches, our residential support workers, the managers within the homes, and how important that is to the potential areas that might need reparation, might need support to develop, and how we start there also to develop their relationships with their extended families, their parents. Their experiences may not have been as straightforward as we might have hoped for. And it's what we do with that makes the difference, I think. How much care and reflection we can do on helping scaffold new opportunities with their own extended families, with their siblings, with their parents, to create a different shape of relationship sometimes, not always. Sometimes our young people have very, very positive, very nurturing, very helpful, very containing relationships with their parents, but it isn't always the case, and we can't assume that, obviously, for our young people who are in the care system.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge part of our role, isn't it, really, as the therapist there for the child. I know that you have a particular interest actually in working with families alongside the young person. And so can you tell us a little bit about maybe what your involvement looks like with parents of young people in care?
Yeah, it is very much an interest of mine. I think some of the data also shows us that for young people who come into care, whether that's sort of residential care or foster care, often our young people end up going back to their families. They will choose to spend time with their families. And so therefore, these are still incredibly powerful, pivotal relationships that our young people gravitate towards. And therefore, for me, it just makes perfect sense to keep the family involved in whatever capacity that they can manage and that we can help support them to maintain. And there's something there about the consistency. There's something there about working with them, potentially even as a therapist, to help support and understand what the needs are for their young person, or their own needs, or what's being triggered in them from their own experiences that might make it difficult at times to sort of really support our young people with the difficulties that they're presenting with.
Well, I guess we draw a lot on dyadic developmental psychotherapy as well, which involves and incorporates parents into that therapeutic process. And sometimes it's about naming some of the pain and challenge that a young person has experienced by being separated from their parents. I think sometimes we can be quite apprehensive to go there and explore it. And it's easier to kind of put it in a box and say, well, you're here now and we're here to support you. What are you currently struggling with? But actually being confident enough to really sit with that sadness that a young person might experience or feel being separated from their birth parents, and being comfortable with feeling sad and knowing that that's okay. And then also thinking about how we can help that young person reconnect in a way that feels manageable and safe and meaningful with their birth parents. So I know that I often have kind of check-in calls with families. We often advocate for families and parents to be involved in reviews with social services to make sure that their voice is centred and heard in those meetings. But also, I think it's important that we incorporate the parents' and families' voice in our psychological assessment. So often they know the needs of their child and what support would benefit them. Just because they're in care doesn't mean that they can't maintain that involvement and responsibility for their child.
It made me think about some work that I'd done previously with young people coming into care, and how in that experience I saw a lot of parents really struggling with that transition, obviously. In some ways, taking their steer from the young person about how they were experiencing it. And sometimes our young people got into a place with it, just, I think this is the best for me. I think it is the right thing for me in the here and now, mum or dad. And I still love you and I still want to spend time with you, but I think this is the best for me in the here and now. And I think sometimes I'm left in a space where I think actually it can free a parent up to focus in on being the parent.
Yeah.
And the more enjoyable parts of parenting, because sometimes when our young people have lots and lots and lots of needs, the practical support and coordinating that and organising that, and the, dare I say it, sometimes the fights that ensue around activating systems, around finding other ways to still get the needs met, in terms of really feeling heard by support services and justifying the need for levels of support, can feel like a huge investment of parental time and energy that largely our parents are left to manage alone, right? There are support services in place that are also hopefully navigating these systems alongside parents, but not always as present as we might like them to be. Let's name it because of funding. I'm sure they would wish to be, but then where are those moments for joy? Where are those moments for reprieve? Where are those moments for just being together with and not necessarily running to anticipate the next needs, sort the next appointment out, organise the sort of gap that is left in support services because there's sickness or whatever in the support worker clock. It's a lot, and I genuinely feel that actually sometimes the care system does free some parents up to be just engaged in being the parent and allow us to navigate the myriad of different needs and sort that out. And that's easier for us because there's more of us. You know, we're all right at that, and it doesn't take, because of objectivity, it doesn't take quite the same toll on us as adults. Yes, we care, but also we're not taking it personally because we're not feeling listened to or we're not feeling heard. We've been doing this for the last 4 years and saying the same thing and not feeling that that's been responded to with an appropriate amount of support. We can navigate it in a different way.
Well, I think especially for the young people that we support in Supercare, you know, we actively support young people with neurodevelopmental needs, with physical disabilities, and that is really complicated for one family to hold and manage by themselves. You know, the social care system, the healthcare system, they're both very complex systems to navigate. And the advantage of having a multidisciplinary team is that we've all got, I guess, our individual expertise in how we address or navigate that specific need. So as psychologists, we know how to navigate child and adolescent mental health services. Our occupational therapist knows how to navigate kind of more health-focused systems. So I think I agree with what you're saying in that actually a parent can just be a parent and provide that love and that relationship and that care and that connection instead of having to fight really tricky systems and battles just to get their young person's needs met. And also I am really struck by the resilience and the strength of parents that we meet, especially in Supercare, where they've really held a lot of, I guess at times, trauma and responsibility as they've tried to get the right support for their child. And by the time that we come along, they've been battling often for years. Even in the education system, we know it can be quite tricky for young people to be awarded an EHCP, an education and healthcare plan. And that means that parents then are just having to kind of work it out by themselves. So, you know, I think sometimes there can be some stigma around the care system, but absolutely, if you've got a network of people who are advocating for you as a family and who can rally around behind you and help you navigate this, that's only a privilege and an advantage, rather than having to kind of deal with it by yourself.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It really is a lot. And it's hard enough for those working within these systems or working within parts of these systems to navigate because they change or they're different in each borough, or we have, you know, we utilise our own relationships with services in order to bring about best results for our families. I was struck by all the other support services were not necessarily that vocal about who could support in certain situations. So, for example, with the EHCP setup, who can provide the best support because, of course, it's a holistic assessment of needs, but certainly in each borough has its own Sendias team, and they should be there in order to help advocate for and support parents in order to navigate that system and drive the EHCP plan forward, knowing the law and the letter of the law and being able, as independent, like an independent organisation, to really sort of push that forward alongside families. So I think it's important to sort of reference that in this little discussion as well, that it isn't always the CAMHS practitioner or the person within your children's home that's going to be advocating for that. You know, sometimes parents are doing this, like you say, on their own, and they might not necessarily know that there is this support system out there for them. And often, if they link in with a local parents forum as well, they are the people who've gone through these systems and challenges and faced every which way of challenge and difficulty and sometimes opposition at every turn. So they will know who else is out there to help and support, and they will be able to give good advice. And there are advocates also that work with specific communities, and that people often bring along to meetings with them, that really know how to push forward assessments of need for our young people. Because often, especially if someone's moved boroughs, moved locations quite a lot, the needs, because of long waiting lists, get pushed further down the list and then have to restart wherever there's a move. So we have that to navigate as well. So people's particular diagnoses or needs not being picked up till a bit of a later date, although those working with the young person will no doubt have noticed that there are needs as yet unnamed potentially.